when you're Attorney General, what does that look like leading up to a potential natural disaster? How are you preparing?
The scope of the Attorney General during disasters is focused on commerce, on price gouging. We have a law here in North Carolina that when there is a disaster declared by the governor, it triggers an anti-price gouging law, which says that any seller of any product, any good or service, cannot charge an unreasonably excessive price. And so oftentimes, unfortunately, we will see some sellers try to exploit people's desperation to make a quick buck. The vast majority of businesses try to do right by their customers. Many of them do heroic things, like Amy Davis in McDowell County in Old Fort. She had a restaurant. She was able to feed, 30,000 meals from the time the storm hit till folks could get back home and cook their own meals. I mean, just incredible acts of generosity. And so that was my focus at that point. I'm actually really gratified in retrospect at how few complaints of legitimate price gouging we experienced, because neighbors really did step up for neighbors in Western North Carolina.
And after you're elected, this is well into the disaster at this point, what are those conversations like with Governor Cooper, kind of getting you up to speed on the more executive functions of your oncoming role?
Well, it was good because I got to take a handful of trips with Governor Cooper to Western North Carolina in the weeks that followed the storm. And it was really important to do that because you could see on YouTube just how devastating the floods were, and you could see homes swept away or floating down a river. But what you couldn't see is the scale from Georgia to Virginia and about 7,500 miles wide, just this swath of incredible, immense damage. And so you really have to be there to get that appreciation. And so, yeah, that was the main benefit for me in the time leading up to becoming governor.
In his Republican response, the Speaker Hall declared the Cooper and Biden administrations the disaster after the disaster. They were too slow responding. Do you think that's a fair characterization?
I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair. What I want to make sure is that we do the job now. The folks who have control now, whether it's the North Carolina General Assembly, whether it's the U.S. Congress, whether it's the Trump administration in Washington or the Stein administration in North Carolina, we have accountability to each other. I'm committed to doing everything I can to make sure that our state's response is as effective as it possibly can be in order to invest in communities that need a lift up, whether it's housing repair or small business assistance or infrastructure restoration. All of those things require money. And we need money from the General Assembly. We need a lot of money from the Congress. And so that's where I'm focused is give us the money so that we can invest in the communities out west, and we will do it to our best ability.
You've been very open with people on both sides of the aisle, especially on the federal level, about getting those funds down here, but largely we haven't. How frustrating has that been?
I want to thank the congressional delegation. They made sure that in the package that Congress passed in December, at the end of last year, there was money for Western North Carolina in that disaster relief bill. It's great that that money was appropriated. An appropriation doesn't mean anything until it gets transferred to another account, which we can then access. So we are in the process of submitting our application to HUD to draw down that type of money. The EPA just told us what our allocation was of the water and sewer money, which is great. It's nearly $700 million, but we don't have access to it. We have to work through a plan with them. So we as a state are going to work as fast as we possibly can to develop those plans, whether it's to HUD or EPA or the DOT or whatever federal agency that's giving us our share, so that they can turn it around as quickly as possible, because once they approve it, that's when we can start spending it.
You spent the first 10 minutes of the State of the State talking about Western North Carolina. I imagine that was not an accident. You said the state of our state is strong after what you've seen in Western North Carolina following the storm. So tell me a little bit about what you've seen.
Yeah, the state of North Carolina is strong because our people are strong. And if anyone had any questions about the strength of our people, all they have to do is go talk to people up there. People who have given over their lives, their businesses, their time to help other people who are in need. The woman I cited, Ashley Cook from Avery County, She has become a one-person social services agency, connecting people's needs with what is available for them. And her story, although special, is not unique. There are so many people. I was in Hot Springs working on a property, a house, a teacher's house that got flooded, damaged. I was with the Baptists on Mission as they were rebuilding that house. I spent a day there doing sheetrock and insulation. They'd spent weeks there. And they're going to still be there until the job is done. And they're doing not only that woman's house, but they're doing other people's house. And it's really incredibly inspiring to see individuals, to see churches, nonprofits, to see businesses, to see local government officials who just work tirelessly to keep people safe after the storm, and the state government and the federal government. The people who are on the ground out there, they're working so hard. And it's easy to take pot shots at folks because they work for the government, whether it's federal or state. Those people are working incredibly hard. The fact that we have 1,300 roads reopened after the storm is amazing. I-40 is open for two-way traffic now as of March 1st. A great accomplishment. The crews, the contractors for our NCDOT have been nothing short of heroic. So I'm just grateful and inspired by how hard other people are working, that I feel I have to do everything in my power and my role as governor to meet the urgency that they are bringing to the task.
You mentioned the congressional delegation and President Trump, and you talk to them as much as you can. How often do you get to, I imagine it's probably easier to speak with Senator Tillis Budd and
Yes.
our congressman than the president, but how often do you get to talk with those folks and further explain our need?
Yeah, well, Senator Tillis and Senator Budd have been very accessible, and I'm grateful to them for that. I've talked to the president that one time in Asheville, and then I was at the White House, and he spoke to me at that point. It was at a public setting. He has made his staff available. I've talked to the National Security Advisor on a couple of occasions. I've talked to the acting FEMA administrator on a couple of occasions. I've talked with the DOT secretary, the agricultural secretary. They have been very accessible, and we're very grateful for that. We just need to continue. They and we need to act with urgency so that we can get our allocated share of money that's already been appropriated to put it to work in Western North Carolina.
Are you having conversations with them about continuing the 100% match from the federal government?
We have been as clear as possible for our ask. Basically, the amount of debris that was created in the storm is without any precedent. We've already collected 5 million cubic yards of debris from roadways, 1 million cubic yards of debris from rivers, and we're nowhere near done. All you have to do is drive through there and you'll see the impact of the storm. So this work is going to take a long time. There is precedent for the federal government doing 100% cost share, meaning that they don't make the state put up a share. The feds pay 100% of the cost of the cleanup, and that's what we're asking for here in North Carolina for another 6 months. We've had that through March 27th of this year, 6 months, and we want another 6 months after that because we've still got so much work to do.
Do they have to extend that before the deadline comes, or?
I don't think they have to do it immediately beforehand. They can do it the week after and it'll still have effect retroactively. Sure. But we all want the certainty of knowing that that extension has been granted. We've made that request of our congressional delegation. We've made that request of FEMA. We've made that request of the White House. And we'll make that request pretty much every day until March 27th.
You were appointed as co-chair to the Council of Governors. Do you view that as President Trump placing value maybe on your relationship or his clear interest in Helene recovery? Yeah,
I can't say. I obviously was not in his head when they made the selection. I'm obviously grateful to be chairing this Council of Governors. It's a bipartisan group of 10 governors, 5 from each side. My fellow co-chair is Glenn Youngkin, the Republican governor of Virginia. And one of the issues we deal with on that council is disaster recovery. And so that is an opportunity where states work closely with the federal government. Obviously, we have a lot of ideas on how FEMA can operate differently and better. It would require acts of Congress to change the rules and the operational structure of FEMA. But I hope that those are ideas that the White House will listen to. It's clear that the president is open to all kinds of ideas on how to reform FEMA.
I've recently covered too many small businesses that have shuttered, and however many weeks ago you guys made the announcement about the Dogwood grants for small businesses, 35
million.
35 million. Any more initiatives like that coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, we're really pleased and proud of our partnership with Dogwood Health Trust, Duke Endowment. We announced a $35 million small business grant initiative. It's for businesses that were affected by the storm, either physically impacted or economically, financially impacted, and it has to be a small business below a certain revenue level, and they have to demonstrate the losses that they experienced. And if so, and they have a plan to utilize those funds to reopen, to hire people, buy inventory, fix up their building, then we can help them with some grant money. The demand for that program has been overwhelming. We've made over 1,000 grants to date, but there are many, many more businesses that want that similar type of assistance, and there are a lot of small businesses that earn more than $2.5 million in revenue that really need a boost in order to keep their folks employed. 40% of affected businesses, small businesses from natural disasters, never reopen. 60% permanently shut their doors within 2 years. That is a story we cannot have happen in North Carolina. Western North Carolina is more dependent on small businesses than other regions in the state, very dependent on tourism. We need to make sure that these businesses can stay in operation until the summer, when they can open their doors to tourists and welcome folks back, get their revenues back up. Because if businesses shutter, that means they have to lay off their workers. You lay off the workers, they can't pay rent. They can't pay rent, then homeowners or apartment owners can't pay their mortgage. Can't pay the mortgage, it gets foreclosed on. It can create a really devastating spiral, and we cannot have that happen. I've asked the legislature to appropriate funds for small business. They've appropriated funds, rightly so, to help farmers who experience crop loss. I'm asking them to just do the exact same thing they've done for farmers to other types of small businesses that are not in agriculture, because the need is immense.
You've been elected in some capacity to experience both Matthew and Florence. Is that a cautionary tale going forwards as people are still recouping on the East Coast?
Yeah, we have to do storm recovery right. I've told my team 4 principles: focus, urgency, accountability, transparency. If we bring those values to our work every day, we will get our work done sooner than 8 years. Like 8 years is simply too long. What people need to understand is that disaster recovery does take years. This isn't something we're going to be done in 2025. We will not be done with this work in 2026. We probably won't be done with it in 2027. It takes years to do all this work, but I want to be done as quickly as possible because people have needs today.
6-month assessment, biggest place we can improve maybe? What would you say?
Getting the money out the door. We need to receive the money from our appropriators, the Congress and the General Assembly. We get those funds. We have to get the programs developed as quickly as possible. We have to start taking applications and then spending the money. Because until we're spending the money, people's houses aren't getting repaired. People's small businesses aren't reopening. Infrastructure is degraded and destroyed. We have got to start investing in Western North Carolina to help folks get back on their feet. They deserve it.
Is that frustrating for you to see, let's call it just billions of dollars that people think they're getting, but then it gets stuck in government and your hands are tied?
I understand a lot of it. Like, if the federal government is appropriating billions of dollars for North Carolina, let's say it's $1.6 billion in HUD money for housing and infrastructure, or if it's nearly $700 million in wastewater water systems. You don't want them to just write a check, because there is fraud in this world. You want to make sure that the plan is well thought out. You want to make sure that there's oversight to ensure the money does what you want it to do. So part of me gets frustrated because they don't just give us the money so we can start investing in our communities. Part of it is I understand it, but what I don't want to have happen is that we're just waiting weeks or months for the money to come. But I'm an impatient person, because the people of North Carolina are impatient, and they have every right to be impatient. So we have to meet the urgency that they need and demand.
Message to folks as they continue to pick up the pieces.
Recovery never goes as fast as folks need or as they deserve. That doesn't mean we're not trying. And I'm busting my tail, my team is busting their tails. We're trying to pull down resources from every source we can identify, whether it's federal, whether it's state, whether it's philanthropic. We want to get resources so that we can invest in people so that they can get back on their feet. That's all folks want. Western North Carolina is one of the most beautiful places on this earth. People are good there. They proved it, they showed it to the world with the generosity of spirit, the decency, the humility. We need to match their good work and help them get back on their feet.